There are 3 games that marked my teenage years spanning from 1995 to 1999. Those 3 titles are Diablo, Age of Empires, and then, just as I was getting over my adolescent obsession with the electric guitar, Quake 3 Arena came out and caused a true earthquake in my gaming life. Want to know more? Let's dive into this video. I took the FIFA 99 disc out of my PC and left the Quake disc inside for months. I became completely obsessed with Quake 3 for dozens of reasons. From a technical standpoint, it was mind-blowing. It was super fast and extremely fun. Before the age of modern battle royale games, and before Call of Duty made its mark, we worshipped as our undisputed god a title that would nowadays be labeled, quite simply, a skill-based arena shooter. Many of us were still using ball mice with cords that kept jamming because dust would accumulate inside them, causing us to lose free-for-all death matches. Those were the good old days when a 300 milliseconds ping was considered normal, or at least acceptable. We got used to predicting our opponent's movements in advance, relying on the rocket launcher to compensate for any ping delays. As id Software had already accustomed us to with their previous titles, Quake 3 had basically zero storyline. And in this particular installment, they really went all in on that approach. There was not even a campaign mode. What you had were a series of arenas, each growing in difficulty, serving as a sort of tutorial to prepare you for multiplayer. Does that remind you of anything in today's gaming world? What really left me in awe, and even now still captivates me, was how every bot you faced came with its own playstyle, strategies and personality, which we back then interpreted as cutting-edge AI. Each bot's behavior was also tightly tied to the arena of which they were considered the guardian. Take Sarge, incredibly strong when it came to close-range weapons, or Bone, seemingly impossible to hit because he hopped around like crazy, or Anarchy, lethal in vertical mobility and long-range shots, up to Xerox, who was utterly unforgiving with the railgun. With Xerox, there simply was no drawn-out battle. It was like a duel in an old western. You'd face him head-on for a split second, no more, and the first to pull the trigger survived. The multiplayer mode could keep teenagers, as well as young adults, glued to their screens for hours on end. Whether it was the classic 1 vs 1, team battles, free-for-all, or capture the flag, Quake 3 provided some of the most memorable shooter moments on PC, perhaps only overshadowed by Half-Life 2, which arrived a full 5 years later. Among my 3 all-time favorite games mentioned above, I never would have dreamed of encountering such a faithful yet functional virtual reality reboot of Quake 3. Over the past few years, we've been receiving a number of ports and mods transitioning popular flat-screen games into VR. The journey started with the surprising port of Half-Life 1, then Doom, then Quake 1 and Quake 2. But I would have never expected that the most frantic shooter of the late 90s would adapt so beautifully to virtual reality. A few years ago, I mentioned Telefrag VR, which tried to offer a similar vibe to Quake 3 Arena. It was a good experiment, sure, but it lacked the charisma, the finely tuned maps, and that design flow that makes gameplay so rhythmical and cohesive. Because Quake 3 Arena was conceived by a crew of brilliant minds who basically served as the backbone of 90s PC gaming, people like Carmack and Romero. If I have to be honest, I'm not even sure what else to say about this port. Aside from telling you that if you're over 30, you absolutely must give it a try. I'm not joking, everything is just as you remember it. In 1999, we had no clear idea what virtual reality was, except maybe from watching The Matrix or, for those old enough, The Lawnmower Man. But if someone had put a modern VR headset on me back then with this Quake 3 port, I probably wouldn't have been able to handle it. The VR port is perfect. The pace is incredibly fast, but it's balanced in a way that every match feels like a dance of leaps and rocket fire. When you play against other people who are also in VR, everyone's reflexes are more or less in the same ballpark. And let me warn you, if you decide to tackle the campaign, if you can call it that, on the highest difficulties, you should expect to reach near ninja levels of agility to succeed. I know what you're probably wondering. Does it cause motion sickness? Unfortunately, after several years in VR, I've realized it can be hard to predict what will cause motion sickness unless something is blatantly obvious. I can say that I personally had no problems, not even with the frequent jumping. Meanwhile, Bonlab made me feel queasy after 5 minutes when I tried to position a box in a certain place so I could hop onto it and then vault over a fence. So I'm clearly not immune to motion sickness. Some mechanics just trigger it more than others, but considering the minimal cost required to try Quake 3 in VR, you definitely shouldn't deny yourself this opportunity. To get it up and running, just connect your headset to your PC and open SideQuest. After that, use the search bar to find Quake 3 and install it. With that, you'll already be able to play the same demo version that was available on PC back in 1999, totally free of charge, giving you a chance to test whether this game suits you. If you decide it's for you, then to play the full version, you'll need to own the complete game on Steam. If you don't already have it, you can purchase it for just a few euros. Once installed, transfer everything in the base Q3 folder from your Quake 3 installation on PC into the corresponding folder. It should have the same title on your Quest headset. Just make sure you've launched the VR version of Quake 3 at least once before so that the game folder is properly created on your headset. And that's really all there is to it. Of course, there are a few little issues to note because nothing is ever truly perfect, even if John Carmack was the brains behind much of this original code. I still remember as if it were yesterday, reading the review score in my favorite gaming magazine when I was 16. Honestly, I'd love to pick it apart and find more negatives, but we're basically dealing with a straightforward port that doesn't seem to require anything extra. Plus, it's compatible with all the mods and add-ons from the flat version. Through an aggregated launcher, you'll be able to install characters, maps, and new gameplay rules. If you still have your old files saved somewhere on an external drive, you can drag and drop them in. If not, there are still plenty of websites and forums from that prehistoric era that remain active, allowing you to download a ton of custom content. Last but not least, the servers are cross-platform. That means if you have a 40-something friend who doesn't own a VR headset, you can still invite them to join your match. Just like in the old days, you can stay up playing until 3 in the morning, although hopefully with a better internet connection than the 56K modem I remember so well, along with the screeching noise it made when connecting. My parents weren't exactly thrilled when I used to stay online until the wee hours of the night, but that's how it was back then. If I had to give it a score, I'd obviously give it a 9. I'm aware that I can't be entirely objective about a port that was probably made by people close to my age for people like me. If Quake was a treasure you adored back in the late 90s, then you're practically obliged to give this VR version a spin. Otherwise, I'd recommend trying other excellent ports, like the earlier mentioned VR mod for Half-Life 1.
Which other possible VR ports are you most excited to get your hands on in the near future? Let me know in the comments. That's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.